Tantor Audio presents The Alien Abduction Files, the most startling cases of human-alien contact ever reported, by Kathleen Marden and Denise Stoner. Narrated by Laural Merlington. Forward. There have been a number of supposed sociological phenomena whose reality has been strongly resisted when first proposed. The notion that priests would sexually abuse choir boys and others seemed outlandish, but it turned out to be all too true. The notion that parents might occasionally physically abuse their children was also resisted by the medical community, but now we have laws requiring teachers to report suspected incidents of abuse. The notion that Germany could be systematically murdering millions of Jews, Romani, and others seemed absurd. After all, Germany was a well-educated, highly cultured country, the land of Goethe and Beethoven. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter has been quoted as saying about such claims, "I know that what you have to say is true, but I don't believe it." Abductions of Earthlings by aliens have been reported since the Betty and Barney Hill case was described in The Interrupted Journey by John Fuller in 1966, with many more reports since. But many people, especially scientists who can't imagine that such abductions could take place without them knowing about it, have vigorously fought the idea. One problem is that an aura of ridicule has surrounded these phenomena as reported by various journalists and debunkers. Yes, the UFO incident on NBC TV in 1975, starring James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons as Barney and Betty Hill, helped some come to understand the possibility. Still, many can't even seriously consider the notion of alien visitation. Claims have been made that travel between stars is impossible. It would take too much time and energy. Similar foolish claims were made about spaceflight, travel to the moon, and, before that, even travel in aircraft. Perhaps the epitome of resistance was reached in 2012, when the British astronomer royal Dr. Martin Rees garnered wide publicity by falsely claiming that only kooks see UFOs, and that aliens wouldn't come this long way just to meet with a few cranks. As might be expected, he gave no indication of being familiar with any of the literature by astronomers or psychiatrists such as Dr. Benjamin Simon, who worked with the Hills, as reported in a much later book, Captured: The Betty and Barney Hill Experience. Most of the work on the book was done by my co-author, Kathleen Marden, who is also the co-author of this book. This book is, among other things, a well-documented overview of two cases, both involving multiple witnesses, and each extending over a long period of time. Denise Stoner and her husband have decided to finally go public with their story, despite some misgivings about the public's reaction. Jenny, whose story is told by Kathleen, has still not been publicly identified. A very important addition to the UFO abduction literature is the data, provided here for the first time in any book, concerning the results of the detailed survey the UFO abduction experiencer conducted recently by Marden and Stoner. Marden and Stoner show that abductees seem to share a number of characteristics and experiences not generally shared by non-abductees, who were also questioned as a kind of control group. Furthermore, they have taken the courageous step of discussing the possibility that the reported experiences are the result of something other than alien intervention, such as astral projection, poltergeist intervention, sleep paralysis, and other explanations put forth by the UFO debunking community. They certainly seem to have made the case for alien intervention. It is certainly to be hoped that this book will encourage many more experiencers to come forth to share their experiences. There is also a real need for more involvement by social scientists in investigations of the topic. There have been a dozen PhD theses done on UFO-related subjects. Surely, there is room for many more serious investigations, which means professors and abductees being willing to stand up and be counted. The past history of strong but eventually unsuccessful resistance to new ideas by academics as reported, for example, in the book Science Was Wrong by Marden and myself, has demonstrated that it takes persistence on the part of proponents in dealing with the objections of the debunkers to new ideas and concepts. A great Nobel Prize-winning German physicist, Max Planck, once said that new ideas come to be accepted, not because their opponents come to believe in them, but because their opponents die and a new generation grows accustomed to them. I can only hope the acceptance of alien abductions as real will come sooner rather than later. It has only become obvious quite recently that mankind and Earth are not in the center of the universe or at the top of the heap. The Kepler space satellite has shown there are literally billions of other planets in the Milky Way, not just the 9 of our solar system. Work on nuclear fusion, the process producing the energy in all the stars, can provide trips to the stars for us. Now we need to stop spending $1 trillion a year on military toys. We need to know who the abductors are and why they are kidnapping Earthlings. The problem is clear. The solution is not. Stanton T. Friedman, retired nuclear physicist. Introduction. Serendipity brought this book's authors together several years ago, when we were living on opposite ends of the East Coast. We discovered that we had some important things in common, so when I, Kathleen, relocated to Florida, I contacted Denise, and we met in person for the first time. It wasn't long before we decided to bring our efforts together by sharing information on the alien abduction phenomenon, working jointly on several investigations, and collaborating on a new research project. Each of us had more than 18 years of experience in the field, and were committed to solving the conundrum of alien abduction. Soon a seed was planted for this book, and after lengthy discussions and evidence sharing, the seeds began to sprout and grow roots. Denise knew me as the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, whose 1961 UFO abduction received worldwide media attention. In 1965, a violation of confidentiality brought their case to the public through a series of unauthorized newspaper articles. It was upsetting at the time, because my aunt and uncle were prominent New Hampshire residents, known as civil rights advocates, who didn't want their UFO experience made public. They had served on a committee through the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity to establish the Rockingham County Community Action Program. My uncle was the chairman of the board of directors. His outstanding involvement in civil rights had earned him a seat on the state of New Hampshire's State Advisory Committee for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. In other words, they were credible individuals who did not wish to relinquish their positive public image. Later, they collaborated with John G. Fuller to tell their already known story in the 1966 bestseller, The Interrupted Journey. The 1975 primetime movie, The UFO Incident, starring James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons, presented a partially fictionalized version of the story. My educational background at the University of New Hampshire in social science, social research, and psychology provided excellent preparation for my current avocation. During my undergraduate years, I spent time volunteering as an intern at New Hampshire's State Psychiatric Hospital as part of my training in abnormal psychology. I had hoped to earn a graduate degree in psychology or clinical social work, but after graduation was faced with the responsibility of supporting myself and my first husband, while he attended graduate school full-time at the University of Cincinnati. He majored in the philosophy of psychiatry, a subject that I found fascinating and absorbed like a sponge. Pressed for money, I took the first job that I could find teaching in the Over-the-Rhine section. It served me well because I had the opportunity to use my skills as a social worker and to learn teaching methods through graduate work in the education department at the University of Cincinnati. As my first husband neared the completion of his master's thesis, I applied to the graduate program in school psychology, determined to eventually earn a doctorate. I was elated when the university awarded me a full scholarship and an assistantship, but there were funding cuts, and the assistantship fell through. Although I had a full scholarship, I couldn't manage the financial burden of supporting myself. It was one of the major disappointments in my early life, one that propelled me into becoming a lifelong learner through independent study. After leaving Cincinnati, I spent many years working as an educator and education services coordinator, and continued my graduate studies on a part-time basis. My research on the subject of hypnosis propelled me to make the decision to earn a certified hypnotherapist credential from the National Guild of Hypnotists. My proclivity toward scientific thought and strong background in the social sciences have served me well. I retired from my professional career to devote full time to a topic that I consider seminal. If there was conclusive evidence that my aunt and uncle had been abducted and returned to their natural environment by extraterrestrial beings, it would be the biggest story in modern history. I had to examine every piece of evidence, the original investigation reports, the scientific analysis of the evidence, hours of hypnosis sessions with one of America's most prominent psychiatrists, Fuller's archival collection, the debunkers' reports, the psychological test results, and so on. Then I conducted extensive interviews with my aunt, along the close encounter route and in her home. I became aware of information that had not previously been published and gained new, compelling insight into the case. After my aunt's death in 2005, I invited the well-known and highly respected ufologist and retired nuclear physicist, Stanton T. Friedman, to collaborate on the book that I'd been researching and writing for many years. He acted as a consultant, ensuring that my statements were accurate and unbiased, and contributed additional scientific content on the investigation of a star map my aunt observed aboard the craft. After 15 years of research and investigation, my book with Stanton T. Friedman, Captured, The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, was published. In 2010, our second book, Science Was Wrong, was published. Each of us contributed 7 chapters on a variety of scientific subjects that were originally declared impossible by some well-educated, powerful scientists who were wrong. Denise and I have forged the same type of relationship as UFO abduction researchers. Denise is an intelligent and highly knowledgeable abduction investigator, one of the best, in my opinion. You will learn more about her education and professional experiences in this book. I had marveled at the fact that she possesses information that only a few prominent abduction researchers are aware of. It is information that we hold in confidence and use to assess the probability that abduction experiencers' memories are consistent with a real event. I would later discover that Denise acquired some of these professional secrets in an unusual manner, aboard an alien spacecraft. She confided the details of her experiences to me near the beginning of our relationship, and asked me to quietly investigate her case. I spent nearly 3 years interviewing Denise and her family members, examining her memoirs, facilitating her memory process, perusing her medical records, and evaluating her case in an unbiased manner. Due to my family members' negative experiences with individuals who have a propensity to falsify the facts about any UFO or abduction case in order to promote their own negative agenda, I had cautioned Denise to retain anonymity. If I were an abduction experiencer and made the decision to go public with my information, I know that the sharks would have a feeding frenzy. My aunt and uncle were victims of ad hominem attacks and false and misleading information throughout their lifetimes. I didn't want Denise or her family members to be subjected to the worst side of some human beings. Denise and her family had kept their alien abduction story under wraps for 30 years, and now had to make the difficult decision to step forward with the truth or retreat into the safety of perpetual anonymity. There was a huge chance that Denise's exposure to the public would affect her sense of well-being. We spent the major part of a month in negotiations through email and over the telephone before we made a final decision, although it was not without some trepidation. One of the witnesses had to bravely step out of the abduction experiencer closet for the sake of many others who are now standing on the precipice, wanting so desperately to speak up, to release what is inside them, to share what they know is the truth beyond a doubt. But following considerable deliberation about the possible consequences, and with her husband's approval, Denise decided to reveal her true identity to the public. After many years of silence, Denise's husband was willing to attempt to unlock his memories of their missing time experiences, first by talking about them, and then through hypnosis. A few blanks were still there like black holes waiting to be filled in, if possible. Denise wanted to test her conscious recall against what her husband could remember. She had already undergone several hypnosis sessions when she resided in Colorado, but her memories were hazy, and the records of her statements under hypnosis had been irretrievably lost. I agreed to facilitate Denise in her effort to unlock her memories through hypnosis, giving us a fuller understanding of her experience. I had promised Jenny, the second experiencer in this book, and her family an assurance of anonymity. If her identity was revealed to the public, it would all but guarantee their financial ruin and the loss of her family's status in their community. Disclosure was not an option. Yet her richly detailed memories of abduction by non-humans were too compelling not to be shared. We had to proceed by fictionalizing her story just enough to preserve her anonymity, but at the same time to share the details of her story as accurately and honestly as possible. In addition to this, a third section had to be added to this book on the personal stories of several abduction experiencers who, like Denise and Jenny, have endured astonishing contact experiences with what, by all accounts, are extraterrestrial beings. Most have conscious memories of a close encounter with unconventional craft and observing non-human entities prior to an abduction. Their neighbors had witnessed strange lights near some of their homes. When they realized the magnitude of what was occurring in their lives, many became fearful, and certain places, objects, sounds, and lights brought on sharp recall of unearthly environments. Some have a strong desire to tell all about this nagging reality that has disturbed so much of their lives. But the fear of public embarrassment waits in the wings, exerting a strong hold on a person's decision to step forward with the truth. An avenue to bring these people together on common ground, without fear of ridicule or persecution by non-believers, is long overdue. Of extreme importance to us is our year-long research project designed to conduct a quantitative analysis on certain concurring commonalities shared by the majority of abduction experiencers. The results of the Marden-Stoner commonalities among UFO abduction experiencers study are startling. Our research has led us to discover abduction experiencers who are strangers to one another, but have remarkable and highly unusual characteristics in common. Their correlating data is startling, perplexing, and begs further investigation by the scientific community. To read the report in its entirety, visit www.kathleen-marden.com and click on Commonality Study Final Report. The information we've collected has caused us to ask these questions. Does contact with entities from other worlds or exposure to an alien environment cause human beings to develop common illnesses? How can theoretical physics explain human procurement processes that seem scientifically impossible? How can ETs travel millions of miles across the vast expanse of space and arrive on Earth unharmed? Why do the majority of abduction experiencers develop uncommon abilities that are not found in a control group? Our listeners must be wondering why we decided to write this book and do this research now. People are asking for disclosure of the facts and the truth behind the UFO mystery. We are sitting on the very edge of discovering another piece of this puzzle. There will never be a perfect time for people to come out with their stories. Yet more and more credible information is being revealed by intelligent, well-spoken, educated, down-to-earth people. The reason more people don't tell their stories is that they are pilots, firefighters, military personnel, doctors, celebrities, political figures, or other individuals who would risk having their lives and careers ruined if their identities were disclosed. It is imperative that they maintain an honorable place in our society. The episodes in this book are real and factual, and have been well documented over an extended period of time. Some took place during daylight hours with witnesses present who were willing to swear to their written statements. We realize that some listeners will look for reasons to dismantle the facts, knowing this can be done with any story presented to the public today. It was decided that no matter the reaction, these people's accounts of alien abduction are too compelling not to be told. It is our hope that this book will hold some clues people are looking for in their attempts to solve this mystery. At the very least, we look forward to receiving new information as a result of telling these people's stories. 1. Missing Time in Colorado. It was a beautiful mid-August afternoon in Arvada, Colorado, and Denise and Ed Stoner were looking forward to a weekend trip to their freestanding mobile home on the Grace Acre Ranch near Buena Vista. The Stoners, Denise's parents, and 50 other families parked their trailers year-round under the watchful eye of the ranch owner, Grace Acre. During the summer months, the Stoners routinely took weekend sojourns to their home away from home, 137 miles southwest of Arvada, a suburb west of Denver. The clear blue Arkansas River, lined with smooth gray river rocks and jagged boulders, cuts through the property. It is known worldwide for its excellent whitewater rafting. To the Stoners, it was an inviting reprieve from the hustle and bustle of the metropolitan area where they made their home. Each year they spent approximately 20 weekends at the ranch, fishing, hiking, and visiting with family and friends. Their trailer was the last in a line of campers close to the fields and Arkansas River. They had constructed their own fireplace, table and chairs, and privy away from the ranch house that sat on the property. Though they were not far from family and friends, beyond them there was only open sky, flaxen fields, high mountain peaks, and the sound of coyotes teaching their young to howl at the moon. Not far from their camper and next to the river were the remains of an old cabin that had been occupied nearly 100 years earlier by the first inhabitants of this tract of land, a woman named Emily and her husband. 2 small graves were sheltered behind a half-fallen black iron fence, hidden among the aspens. Local legend has it that Emily's young child drowned in the river, and overcome with grief, she followed shortly thereafter, swallowed up by the roaring river's grasp. Denise and Ed loved walking for miles in the Colorado sun, looking for arrowheads and tools the Ute people had used for a summer camp in the area before European settlers occupied the land. A railroad crossed the property not far past the gate, and once or twice a day a train would come roaring through on its way cross-country. It broke the silence in the serene setting steeped in Native American tradition and cowboy culture. It was to be a delightful weekend getaway. Denise's parents, accompanied by a close family friend, had gone on ahead of their children to prepare the camp for a weekend of merriment, relaxation, and fishing at the headwaters of the Arkansas River. The Stoners were expected to arrive no later than 8:30 p.m. for a dinner that was being prepared by Denise's mother. Denise had loaded the car with food, clothing, and gear, with assistance from her 14-year-old disabled daughter, Deanna, while Ed tended to details of his job as operations manager at a Boulder flooring business before leaving for the weekend. The trip to their camp had become part of their weekend routine. It was 5 p.m. on Friday afternoon, August 13th, 1982, when the 3 family members and their 6-year-old dog, Ginseng, a purebred Shih Tzu, piled into their blue-and-white Ford Granada for the drive to their campsite. Ed gassed up the car and checked the odometer near his home in Arvada. The sky was clear, and traffic was light on the back roads. His eyes met a huge sign stretching across the highway that announced, "Howdy, folks. Welcome to Golden, where the West lives." Traffic was heavier now, but he would soon pick up U.S. Highway 285, the route that led to Buena Vista. Finally, traffic thinned somewhat as they and others made their way to Conifer, Bailey, and Grant, along winding mountain roads to Kenosha Pass, a 10,000-foot-high cut that leads toward Jefferson and the South Park Valley on the eastern side of the Front Range. Beyond Jefferson, U.S. Highway 285 straightens, offering a more comfortable and relaxed journey across the broad basin. Ed always stopped on Kenosha Pass for a breather and to take in the view of the South Park Valley and the town of Jefferson at the base of the pass. The scenic overlook is about 60 miles from their Arvada home. Considering the city traffic and mountain roads, it took almost 90 minutes driving time. They arrived at approximately 6:30 p.m. and stayed at the scenic vista for not more than 10 minutes. Denise decided to stay in the car while Ed and Deanna took in the beauty of the valley below. They returned to the car, Ed taking the wheel again. The sun was still strong in the western sky as he made a right turn and a gentle curving arch downward and to the left toward the valley floor below. Their drive across South Park Valley to Trout Creek Pass and their encampment 7 miles north of the town of Buena Vista would take an additional 90 minutes. While Ed wheeled the car down Kenosha Pass toward Jefferson, Denise was busy watching the mountains and the vast expanse of the valley below, while Deanna was getting sleepy in the back seat. Ed and Denise were relaxed and talking, switching topics every few minutes. Visibility was crystal clear for miles. Denise was taking in the ranch lands to her left, barren except for one new home being built not far off the road. There were never many cars on this stretch of highway in the early evening, none on this particular night. As the stoners began to descend from Kenosha Pass to Jefferson in the South Park Valley, Denise heard Deanna's soft, evenly spaced breathing as she slept soundly in the back seat. Ginseng was pressed up against Ed's leg, his head nestled near his knee, sound asleep. Finally, they passed through Jefferson. Glancing into the sky, Denise's eyes were drawn to 2 yellow-white lights that were increasing in size and seemed to be rapidly approaching. They were 4 miles south of Jefferson when the lights were over the car. Without warning, the stoner's vehicle began to move sideways off the highway toward the desert floor, under someone else's control. They felt momentum, but nothing more. As if only a moment had passed, the stoners found themselves beyond the southern end of the Mosquito Range, driving up Trout Creek Pass, beyond South Park Valley. They had no memory of driving through the valley or the town of Fairplay, south of Jefferson, on the stretch of US 285 that led to Buena Vista. A moment before, it was broad daylight, but now the blackness of night had blanketed the valley, and a penetrating chill had fallen upon the interior of their car. Somehow, 40 miles of their journey had simply vanished. Ed was mystified. Why was it dark? Who had turned on his headlights? It wasn't him. The sun had been shining only a moment earlier. The hair on the back of his neck was standing on end. Denise spoke first. "What the hell just happened?" Immediately, Ed pulled the car to the side of the road and checked his watch. Although moments before it was 6:55, it was now nearly 11. He was hyperventilating, disoriented, and perplexed. His fear increased exponentially when he checked his trip odometer. It read 74 miles, the exact reading that he had taken 4 miles south of Jefferson, hours earlier. There was a major discrepancy not only in time, but in travel miles. Somehow the stretch of highway that they always traveled from Jefferson to Trout Creek Pass had not registered on the odometer or in their minds. They had lost 40 miles on the trip odometer, and more than 3 hours had passed. Ed and Denise sat on the side of the road in silence, attempting to rationalize the discrepancy. They were stunned, shaken beyond words. There was no prosaic explanation for their lost time and the missing miles. Shaking his head in disbelief, Ed proceeded up Trout Creek Pass, taking in the starry night sky to Johnson Village and Buena Vista. 7 miles beyond that was their destination, the Grace Acre Ranch. When Ed wheeled into the ranch, he and Denise were met by a surprising sight. Their family and friends were standing in the road in front of their trailer, watching to see if the headlights coming down the driveway were theirs. The anxious expressions on their faces added an additional layer of mystery to the night. What had happened? Where had they been? It was going on 11:45 p.m. more than 6 hours from their 5 p.m. departure time. Ed's father-in-law and his friend had become so concerned that they were entertaining the idea of using the phone at the ranch house to call the Colorado Highway Patrol.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?